My brother was expelled for cheating at law school by 10 a.m. By noon, my mother burst into my cafe, screaming that I'd ruined our family. Hi, I'm Claire, and while they worked 3 jobs to build his future, I quietly built mine behind the scenes. No one noticed me until I got a full scholarship to one of the world's top architecture schools. They thought I was just the girl who made lasagna and folded laundry. They had no idea I'd turn silence into strategy. Tell me, have you ever been overlooked in your own home like your dreams didn't matter? I'd love to hear how you rose from that. Drop it in the comments below. The sound it made wasn't even dramatic. Just a dull, wet smack ceramic against tile, followed by the hiss of sauce meeting warm floor. The lasagna, my mom spent hours instructing me to make lay face-down steam, curling upward like the ghost of a dream. And under it, soaked in marinara and mozzarella, was my scholarship draft. 6 hours of writing erased in 3 seconds. Ryan didn't even glance back. Told you it was trash, he muttered, already heading up the stairs. I knelt down, slowly pressing a paper towel to the mess, my fingertips brushing the soggy edge of the only essay I'd let myself care about this month. My mother's heels clicked across the floor. She didn't ask what happened, just surveyed the mess like she was inspecting hotel damage. Clean that up, Claire, and start another one. He's got a full study load tomorrow. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I have work in an hour. That little cafe job? Her tone could have curdled cream. You're 19. You've got time to figure things out. Your brother is in law school. I didn't respond. Dad was still behind the newspaper, like always making a show of turning a page he hadn't read. It reminded me of what he once said, Ryan's our future. You'll get your time. But someday never arrived. It just kept packing its bags and moving down the road. I said, start another one, Mom snapped. I moved to the fridge, hands steady, only because I'd practiced for years. While the sauce-stained essay sat crumpled in the trash, I reached into my hoodie pocket and touched the real draft. The one I'd worked on during closing shifts at Maple and Oak, saved on a USB, then printed at Naomi's apartment. I slipped it into a file labeled Wedding Mood Board. No one in this house ever clicked that folder. Mom watched me like I might refuse. And wear something decent to work. You never know who you'll meet. Yes, ma'am. As I slid the new lasagna into the oven, I noticed Dad shifting in his chair as if he might say something. Maybe ask what I was writing about. Ask if I was okay. Instead, he folded the newspaper and walked out. The new lasagna finished at 5:18 p.m. Ryan didn't come down to eat it. He was probably scrolling through sports memes while pretending to study. I grabbed my backpack and slipped out before Mom could ask me to plate it. Maple and Oak Cafe smelled like nutmeg and espresso. The sign out front still squeaked in the wind. Naomi had already prepped the syrup bottles, her curly hair tied up in a bright red scarf that made her look like a retro superhero. You look like you've survived a crime scene, she said, sliding a cold brew my way. Lasagna-related homicide, I replied. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Tell me it wasn't another scholarship draft casualty. I nodded, but not the real one. I pulled the clean draft from my folder and handed it to her. Architecture escape in building what doesn't exist yet. She skimmed the first lines and whistled. Claire, this is actually really good, like Chills level good. I'm sending it tonight. ETH Zurich's deadline is this week. Switzerland, she said softly. That's a long way from Madison. That's kind of the point. She nodded. And your family? What about them? She didn't push. At 6:27, a group of guys in matching university hoodies walked in. I knew that laugh before I even looked up. Ryan, of course. His law school friends followed him like ducklings. He barely glanced at me. 4 Americanos. And whatever my sister's having, she looks like she's been hit by finals week. Naomi, bless her, stepped forward. I've got it, she said quickly. Claire, take the back tables. I moved toward the rear, scrubbing sticky syrup rings from the wood, listening as Ryan's voice cut through the cafe. Nah, man, I don't study. That's for suckers. You just need to know how to work the system. His friends laughed like he'd said something profound. Naomi shot me a look and shook her head. As she dropped off their drinks, she leaned in and whispered, They think loud equals right. By closing, I was spent. My apron smelled like cinnamon and frustration. Naomi handed me a to-go cup and a folded napkin. Inside, she'd written, "You deserve better, and I'm going to help you prove it." When I got home, I tucked my cafe tips into a shoebox under my bed and reached behind my mattress. My sketchbook was still there, pages filled with columns, light angles, and bridges I'd designed in the dark. They could have their lasagna. I was building something else. Naomi's voice floated over the steam of the espresso machine as I rinsed milk pitchers. "You're not escaping," she said quietly. "You're rebuilding." It was one of those mornings when the light hit the cafe windows just right, making everything glow in honey tones. The kind of morning that made you think anything was possible, even when your eyes were burning from only 4 hours of sleep. I glanced at her and smiled. "Rebuilding with what tips and espresso shots with grit," she said, "and a little help." 2 days earlier, she'd handed me a folded business card that read Dr. Elliot Crane, private tutoring architecture and calculus, retired but not tired. I hadn't expected much. I mean, who responds to texts from random cafe baristas asking for academic salvation? Apparently, Dr. Crane. His townhouse smelled like paper and peppermint tea. Books were stacked in elegant chaos topics, ranging from Gothic arches to modular theory. He wore a wool vest despite the June heat and looked like he'd stepped out of a New Yorker cartoon. "I'm not a miracle worker," he'd said, eyes kind behind thick lenses. "But I do believe in late bloomers." That was 2 weeks ago. Now I spent every Tuesday and Thursday morning in his office hunched over mechanical pencils and grid paper, trying to remember that formulas could be forgiving when paired with vision. At home, I played the obedient daughter. I made dinner. I sorted laundry. I smiled politely when Mom said things like, "Ryan's got a lot on his plate, you know. Don't add stress." What I didn't say was, "He has a new car. I have a bus pass." The SUV showed up in the driveway like a reward from heaven. Leather seats, heated steering wheel. When I asked where the money came from, Mom just said, "Your father got a raise, and Ryan needs to make a good impression." I wondered if my last 3 months of cafe paychecks were sitting in that car's insurance plan. I kept my head down. At night, I pressed my alarm for 4:45 a.m. so I could study before my shift. Dr. Crane gave me old exams and scratched notes in red ink that sometimes just said beautiful clarity. Keep going. One afternoon, while tidying Ryan's room, because Mom insisted he needed uncluttered energy to focus, I noticed his laptop open. A folder blinked in the corner of the screen. Essays for you, DocsX. I paused. Ryan wasn't in the room. His shower ran upstairs. My heart thudded as I leaned in. The folder was full of essays, not written by Ryan. Some were labeled by course others with price tags Intro to Ethics, $40 legal reasoning, 80 files. The door creaked upstairs. I shut the screen, heart racing, and turned to fluff his pillow like nothing had happened. That night, I made a new transfer from my tip jar to a hidden online account Naomi helped me set up. It wasn't much, just under $2 for hun, but it was something. I added a password-protected file labeled Zurich Dream containing PDFs of my resume transcripts and a personal statement in progress. At the cafe the next morning, I drew the first sketch of something I'd been dreaming about for weeks. A circular room open at the center, windows arched like cathedral ribs, a place where people could gather, share, whisper, and be heard. I labeled it the Echo Room. "What's that?" Naomi asked, leaning over the counter with a refill for Mrs. "Banning our retired librarian regular. Something I want to build someday," I said. Mrs. Banning slid her usual 3/4 across the counter. "Don't forget, sweetheart," she said with a wink. "Some of us change the world a little at a time." That afternoon, I came home to find Ryan sprawled across the couch, shirtless, video chatting with someone. He didn't even pause when I walked in. "Man, I swear I don't even touch half those assignments," he bragged. "I outsource everything but the grades. Work smart, not hard, right?" His friend's laugh echoed through the speaker. I didn't say a word. I walked past them, headed straight to my room, and shut the door gently. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a new message thread. "Dr. Crane, I'm almost ready. Just need one more clean draft." I hit send, placed my phone on the windowsill, and opened my sketchbook again. The lines of the Echo Room curved beneath my pencil like roots steady and growing. Because silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The fine plates only came out twice a year Thanksgiving, and when Mom had an agenda. That night, the table shimmered under dimmed chandelier light, every fork and napkin folded with precision. It wasn't for celebration. It was a setup. Mom hummed as she poured iced tea into the crystal glasses. "Claire, fix your collar, please, and don't slouch when Ethan arrives." Ethan Myers, Ryan's law school friend, polite, quiet, with a family of doctors and lawyers behind him. The last time he visited, Mom had cornered me afterward in the kitchen. "He asked about you," she said. "He's stable, comes from a good family. Think about it." Now, I didn't need to think I knew. This dinner wasn't about pot roast and polite conversation. It was matchmaking disguised as roast carrots and perfectly creased napkins. "Ethan's not expecting anything," Mom said as she adjusted her pearl earrings. "But it doesn't hurt to be pleasant." I just nodded, biting my tongue. Dad sat quietly in the living room, half watching the news, half pretending not to notice the rehearsal unfolding around him. Ryan had yet to come downstairs. Before the doorbell rang, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to call Naomi. "You're sure about tonight?" she asked, her voice muffled by the sound of kettle steam. "About submitting the application?" "Yes." We'd spent the afternoon at her studio apartment cross-checking every line of my ETH Zurich forms. She'd made peanut butter toast and poured too much honey over the edges as usual. I'd eaten one bite too nervous for more. "I double-checked your transcripts and that rec letter from Dr. Crane," Naomi said. "You've got this, Claire." I stared at the blinking cursor on my laptop for a long time before clicking submit. And when the confirmation page loaded, I didn't cry. I just closed the lid, exhaled, and let the quiet settle around me. Now back in my hallway, I whispered, "Thank you." "For everything," she chuckled. "Don't thank me until you're boarding that plane." The doorbell rang. "I've got to go," I said, sliding my phone into my sweater pocket. Ethan stood on the porch holding a bouquet of yellow tulips, Mom's favorite. She beamed as she took them, launching into full hostess mode. Ryan arrived just in time to avoid setting the table, his face pinched with something between irritation and anxiety. Dinner began with compliments and forced laughter. Mom hovered near Ethan, topping off his tea and asking about his internship. "Ryan says you're doing exceptionally well in ethics." Ethan blinked. Yeah, it's been eye-opening." Across the table, Ryan shot him a warning glance. I picked at my mashed potatoes, barely hearing their exchange until Ethan turned to me. "You're into architecture, right?" I nodded cautiously. He smiled. "That's cool. The way you observe things, it makes sense," Mom jumped in. "Claire's very artistic. Always drawing. She could have done something with it if she hadn't been so quiet about it all. She's wasting her looks," she once told Ryan in the kitchen. "At least Jamie's willing to overlook that." The words rang in my head now, even if she hadn't said them tonight. Halfway through dessert, Ethan leaned over and dropped something by my foot, a small black USB drive. His voice was low. "You should know what your family's investing in." My stomach clenched. "Everything okay?" Mom asked, watching us closely. I bent down to retrieve the drive, forcing a smile. "Just dropped my napkin." Ryan looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He stood abruptly. "I've got homework," he muttered, walking out of the room without finishing his plate. Dad glanced up, but didn't follow. After the table was cleared, I escaped to my room and plugged the USB into my laptop. It contained 5 folders, all labeled with course codes and dates. Inside were Word documents, essays, formatted in Ryan's style, but none written by him. Some had payment confirmations. One even included a note. "Thanks for your repeat order." I sat back in my chair, hands trembling. A notification pinged on my screen. New email, ETH Zurich School of Architecture. Application received. The timing was uncanny. I hovered over the subject line, heart hammering. Then I whispered to no one but myself, "Let's see what happens now." Ethan hadn't even sat down before Ryan was on his feet, face flushed and voice slicing through the dining room. "You told her the roast chicken hadn't been carved." Sweet tea sat untouched in tall glasses, with lemon slices wilting under the chandelier light. My mother's table was set like a magazine spread, but tension buzzed like static under every napkin fold. Ethan blinked slowly, his chair still half pulled. "I didn't say anything you hadn't already done." Ryan looked at me then, no pretense left, no smirk, just bare fury. I didn't flinch. "You've been digging through my files," he hissed. I reached into my sweater pocket, pulled out the USB, and set it next to my water glass. "No," I said quietly, "but I don't need to. You've been leaving a trail wide enough to trip over." Mom stood, hands hovering over the centerpiece. "We are not doing this tonight." I turned toward her. "What are we doing then?" She blinked. "Pretending again," I asked. "Because we're great at that." Dad shifted at the end of the table, his knife still beside an untouched roll. He watched Ryan, then Ethan, then me, but said nothing. Ethan cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go." "No," I said, "you should hear this too." I pulled out my phone, unlocked the email that had sat unopened since last night. I read aloud, "Dear Ms. Harper, congratulations. You've been admitted to the ETH Zurich School of Architecture with full scholarship." Mom's face went rigid. "Switzerland." "Yes," she shook her head. "You're being impulsive. You didn't even tell us you applied. Because I knew what you'd say." Ryan barked a bitter laugh. "She timed this, didn't she?" "You wanted to steal the spotlight." "Spotlight?" My voice cracked like dry earth. "Ryan, I work double shifts to afford notebooks. You get a car. I hide scholarship essays in a wedding Pinterest folder. You outsource yours to strangers." He lunged fast and clumsy across the table. The USB skittered to the floor, tea sloshed, and a roll landed with a thud against my plate. But I didn't move. I'd seen this kind of storm before. It always passed, even when it raged. David stood so fast his chair scraped wood. His hand caught Ryan's arm mid-swing. "Enough!" The word landed like thunder. For the first time, Ryan looked startled. His chest heaved. The anger was still there, but it had cracked at the edges. "Sit down," David said, his voice quiet but final. Ryan wrenched his arm free and backed away. From across the table, Lisa's hands trembled as she reached for a napkin she didn't need. "Claire," she said, her voice breaking, "if you walk out that door, don't come back." I didn't hesitate. "Then start cooking your own lasagna." David's gaze snapped to me. For a second, I thought he might yell too, but instead he stared down at the napkin in his wife's hand, then at my hand still resting on the table, shaking just slightly. He noticed. He noticed and didn't say a word. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Naomi, whatever happens, you've already won. You broke the cycle." I bent down and picked up the USB. No one moved. Even the air seemed to wait. I straightened and looked at each of them, Ryan with his pride curling into something smaller, Lisa with her image cracking like porcelain, David with his silence breaking from the inside out. "You built this house on a single story," I said. "One where Ryan is the hero and I'm the footnote." I pocketed the drive. I'm done being quiet just to keep the floor from shaking. And then I walked out. By 10 a.m., Ryan had been expelled. By lunch, I was the reason the family was ruined. The news broke quietly, an email blast to all law students, a brief mention on the university's ethics board page, and then it spread like spilled coffee across campus screens. Student removed for academic misconduct. Systemic pattern of essay submissions under review. His name was included in the third paragraph. No headlines. Just shame wrapped in legal phrasing. At Maple and Oak, Naomi handed me a small package wrapped in brown paper and twine. "For your desk in Switzerland," she said. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a framed napkin. In her careful handwriting, "Future architect served here." I choked out a laugh. "You kept this. You spilled chai on it your first week here," she said. "But I liked the way your handwriting curved. You wrote revised draft and drew a spiral that turned into a staircase. I knew then." "Thank you," I said, voice cracking more than I wanted it to. "You deserve every good thing coming." Before I could respond, the cafe door flew open. "Mom!" She looked nothing like the picture of control she usually projected. No pearls, no perfect bun. Her hair frizzed at the ends, her lipstick uneven. "Claire," she barked. "We need to talk. Now." Naomi stepped between us. "This is a private business," she said, voice calm but steely. "You can talk to Claire outside, or not at all." "She's destroyed our family," Mom snapped. "Her brother's life is in pieces." Naomi's eyes narrowed. If you raise your voice again, I'll call security. You've got 30 seconds. I just need her to take it back, Mom said. To tell them Ryan made a mistake. That he was overwhelmed. That I didn't report him, I said, stepping forward. Dean Scarlett found the files. I didn't send them. Mom's eyes filled. But you didn't stop it either. You let him fall. No, I said. He jumped. Naomi turned. That's enough. Mom hesitated, then spun on her heel and left. The cafe felt heavy for a few seconds, like the air itself needed to breathe again. That night, I came home to find Dad waiting in the kitchen. The table was set with 2 plates. Nothing fancy, just leftover pasta, warm apple pie, and my ETH Zurich welcome packet sitting in the middle. I opened it, he said as I sat. I shouldn't have, but I did. I stared at him. You were always building, he said quietly. We just never looked. The words sat between us simple and heavy. I remember when you were 7, he continued, you built a model of the Empire State Building out of cereal boxes. We threw it out before the church ladies came over. Thought it looked messy. That's what your mom said. I didn't say anything. I regret that, he added. A long silence stretched. Then he pushed the pie toward me. I didn't know how to be your dad when everything in this house revolved around your brother. You still don't, I whispered. He nodded. But I'm trying now. It's late, I know. Before I could reply, Ryan entered. He looked small. Not physically, he was still taller than me, still broad-shouldered and clean-cut, but the air around him had changed. His hoodie was wrinkled, his eyes hollowed with sleep deprivation or shame. He spotted the welcome packet. Give me that, he said, voice raw. Dad stood. No, Ryan's voice rose. I need it. I need to know what's in there, what she said to them, how she beat me. You beat yourself, I said, standing too. I was just busy surviving. Ryan reached across the table, but Dad grabbed his wrist mid-motion. Enough, he said again, firmer this time. Ryan pulled away and stormed upstairs, slamming his door so hard a picture frame tipped sideways. I packed in silence that night. Clothes, sketchbooks. A photo of me and Naomi at the cafe last Christmas, wearing matching Santa hats and pretending to like peppermint mochas. Then I climbed to the attic. Dust swirled as I pulled out the milk crate filled with old spiral notebooks and sketch pads. Designs of public libraries shaped like open books bus shelters with benches that folded out as hammocks, and the echo room page after page evolving. I placed them in my suitcase, then found a roll of masking tape. I wrote it slowly, deliberately, before sticking it across the front Claire Harper Architect. At the airport gate, I waited alone. My phone buzzed. Naomi had sent a photo, the Harper House lights off, curtains drawn. The lights are off, I smiled. Mine are on. ETH Zurich looked nothing like home. That was the point. The stone corridors were colder, older, steadier. Light streamed through high windows like pages in motion. Snow lined the rooftops outside, gentle and persistent, frosting every corner of the city like a secret. Inside the studio, my presentation board stood on a clean easel flanked by 2 models made from mat board and hand-scored balsa. Each room curved like a shell built to amplify quiet rather than compete with noise. I had called it the Echo Room, a public learning space repurposed from forgotten storage units filled with natural light and modular seating. The professors leaned forward as I began. My palms felt damp, but I spoke clearly. The strongest walls aren't made from steel, I said, but from truth. And the most meaningful spaces aren't always loud. They just make room for everyone to be heard. One professor adjusted his glasses. And what was your inspiration for this design? I hesitated for just a second. Then, a house where I was told to be quiet. There was no dramatics in the room, no gasp, just a pause, a shared understanding. A few heads nodded, and I saw one professor tap a note beside my name. Afterward, I stepped outside into the chilled courtyard and pulled my phone from my coat pocket. Naomi was already calling. Her cafe apron was dusted in flour. Guess who just tipped with a euro coin and asked where the American girl went? I grinned. Still stealing your best regulars? You were the best regular, she said. Now I just deal with cranky grad students who tip in advice. Behind her, I saw the old countertop, and right in front of the tip jar, another napkin taped beside the lid. She turned her camera. It read, "Home is earned." I felt tears well in my eyes. "Did you write that?" "Nope." "Mrs. Banning. Said she missed your handwriting. We talked for 10 minutes about nothing and everything. Then she gave me updates." "Your mom's..." "Changed," Naomi said. "She's volunteering now, career counselor for young women at the community college. They say she's scarily organized. And Ryan?" Naomi leaned against the espresso machine. "He's doing deliveries for the campus bookstore. Rumor is he's taking night classes. And reading. Actual books." I nodded. Good. He needed something real. That evening, after classes, I sat cross-legged in my small flat and opened a letter with my father's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, Claire. "We dimmed your light. You kept it burning. I see that now. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know that watching you leave cracked something open in me. You weren't running, you were rising, and I'm proud of who you are. Love, Dad." My fingers trembled as I folded the letter. I placed it in a box under my desk next to the napkin Naomi had framed. Then I printed a photo of my presentation board, the models lit by the skylight, and slid it into an envelope addressed to the Harper House. On the back, I wrote, "This was built from silence. And now it speaks." Later that week, I invited a friend from class over to study. She brought wine and stories about growing up in Croatia. I made lasagna for the first time my way. Less ricotta, more roasted vegetables layered with confidence instead of obligation. "I thought you said you didn't cook," she teased. I smiled. "I said I didn't serve." That night, I stood alone outside my building. Snow brushed my sleeves. Bells rang in the distance from the university tower, muffled and slow. For once, I wasn't waiting for permission. Zurich is not the place I once called home, but it taught me that not all homes are made of bricks and blood. Some are made of silence, Will, and the choice to stand up for yourself. I learned that sometimes love comes not from trying to please others, but from holding on to your light, even when someone else tries to extinguish it. If a roof can only accommodate the expectations of others, then perhaps we need to draw a new blueprint. Have you ever had to choose between peace and yourself? If this story resonates with you, I would love to hear from you. Because maybe someone is waiting for an echo like I did.